Welcome to Econline, everyone. This is just a short video on externalities, which is a problem that we see in economics when markets basically have costs and benefits that affect other people besides the people who are in the initial transaction. So externalities are a form of market failure, and it's when free markets don't work as well as they're supposed to. So let's just look at a general concept of what externalities are. Typically in an economic transaction, and in every transaction thus far in the course, we've basically assumed two things. That we have an individual and another individual who engage in some kind of transaction with each other, and it's mutually beneficial. That's why one person pays the money, and that's why the other party sells the good or service. Both parties can benefit from it. And we assume that that's the end of the transaction. But there are some transactions that affect other people, and sometimes those transactions can affect them in a good way. Sometimes it can affect them in a bad way. We start off with the bad ways because they're a little bit easier for us to understand. An externality is when two people do something that makes them happy, but a third person gets kind of screwed over in the deal. A good example of this is secondhand smoke. The individual who buys the cigarettes is presumably happy with their decision. The company that sells the cigarettes is presumably happy that they've sold them. But when the smoking begins, there are maybe people in the nearby vicinity who are subjected to lower quality air as a result of the other person smoking. So what we would say here is that there is a cost to the behavior. That would be what happens to this guy, the illness and so on and so forth. There is a cost to the behavior of these two individuals that is not accounted for by their transaction here in the market. Instead, that cost is paid, as we said before, by this third party. A positive externality works the exact same way, except in this case, the person who is a third party benefits. An example of this would be if somebody came and repaired a blighted house in the neighborhood. Blighted meaning that it's abandoned or in disrepair. Those tend to attract criminal activity, they look bad, they lower people's property values overall. When an investor comes in and fixes up that house and sells it, or a family buys it and restores it to good condition, everybody in the neighborhood benefits. So in that case, they receive a positive benefit as a result of the transaction between the earlier buyer and seller, that they did nothing to earn. So externalities are a problem in economics because what happens is there are these situations where people are receiving costs, or I'm saying receiving benefits or incurring costs that they did nothing to have anything to do with. The problem with this as well is, and aside from the fact that the third parties are affected, the two parties in the transaction are affected as well. Their behavior is different because they're not paying the full cost or receiving the full benefit of their action. So we're going to take a look in more direct economic terms how this looks as we start to hash out supply and demand diagrams and where real prices and quantities in the market end up as a result of externalities. But as a starting point, this is just a basic description of how they are or what they are and how they work.